All right, here we go. Welcome to our review of chapters 7, 8, and 9 of The Science of Getting Rich. How are you, Patrick? Productive?
Yeah, doing quite well. How about yourself?
Good. Well, I had a shower and put some underpants on, so I'm already ahead of 80% of the population.
And call it a day.
Yeah, I can end at that. And I'm immersing myself in the parallel curriculum. So I have two books at the moment that I feel are they're changing how I look at the environment around me. So one is The Science of Getting Rich, and the other one
Hmm.
is Atomic Habits. And
Nice.
these books are great. I'm enjoying the parallel curriculum, but then, of course, keyword is parallel, which means I have to go back to the regular curriculum, which means I'm learning all this stuff, and then I have to do coursework on, oh, if the patient comes in with gastrointestinal problems, why would it be good for them to have a probiotic and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm enjoying actually doing the useful content with you.
It's all good. It's all good. It'll serve you in some way for sure.
Well,
Cool.
for chapter 7, a lot of it is about being grateful, not falling into competitive thought, and having more of that abundant frame. And it reminded me of an analogy that I'd like to share. I didn't come up with this, but I love to talk about it because I think it's a great analogy. And basically, there was a study done in the 90s, and it was to look at the how much was Bill Gates earning over time, and they calculated that he was making $300 a second. So if you think about how much that is, if Bill Gates had $300 in his pocket and he dropped the cash, it wouldn't be worth his time to bend over and pick it up. So
Right.
that's a huge like financial abundance. So if you're in a meeting with Bill Gates and you're telling him something, whatever you're telling him, it better be worth $300 a second, otherwise you're wasting his time. But then the concept of it is, whenever you think about it, when Bill Gates was in a garage somewhere and he was creating Microsoft, how
Hmm.
much was his time worth then? Well, in a way, $300 a second, because it was building up to that. It was building up to the amount of abundance that he was having in Microsoft.
Hmm.
So the concept is called borrow some abundance from your future, because it's asking, when you are that person that you're becoming, how much abundance are you going to have with your time, with your money, with the relationships that you form? How much screening are you going to do for your mentors, your friends, the people you hang out with and only want to be with the best? How much
Yeah.
willingness are you going to have to walk away if the person is not fulfilling that? Now, that's if you get there. I'm not there yet, and there's students in this group that are not there yet. But if you use that concept and borrow some abundance from your future, you will start to act in that way and ask, well, how much is my time worth now? What should I be investing my money in now? Who are the people that I should be spending with now? But the key factor is, that's if you're on the path. That's if you get there. So it's okay to borrow that abundance and be like, it's okay. I can be abundant when I'm communicating this to my patients, or when I'm spending money on seminars that are going to get me to where I want to be. If you're on the
Right.
path, then you can have that abundant mentality. But if you're just sitting on the sofa eating Cheetos all day and getting drunk every night of the week, then you're not on the path, and there's no future to borrow the abundance from.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I mean, this particular book is relating to material wealth and money, but just in terms of abundance, and we'll get into this a little bit. But what's really really important for you? So even borrowing from your future self, there's a lot of stuff that I choose not to do because it's not worth my vital energy. I don't make $300 a second, but I know that the energy that I put into doing certain things will take away from the vital energy that I will have to do what's actually genuinely important for me and keeps me from advancing in that particular direction. So it's a great way as you go through your studies and when you get out and things like that, is learning to delegate those things that you don't actually enjoy and finding a way, because there's somebody out there that does actually enjoy it. There are people that enjoy, like for me, I hate organizing, papers and tasks and things like that. I mean, I'll spend hours upon hours upon hours reading and studying and researching. but I don't really enjoy organizing those things. But there's people out there that fundamentally enjoy doing it, and they love like taking chaos and turning it into order. So wealth is one way. Having money is a good way to be able to specialize like that and be able to delegate those things to someone who does enjoy it, and they're getting more, they're giving you more use value than cash value. And it's a good exchange. So yeah, absolutely. That's a great concept there.
Yeah. And I liked the quote. It said, keeping in creative thought and not falling into competitive thought. But
Yes.
we fall into that a lot as chiropractors. And I think especially as a student, because I'm surrounded by chiropractors all day, and you can fall into that competitive frame of, oh, this person's adjusting's better than mine, or this person's communication's better than mine, or this person's seeing more people in clinic. And I wanted to ask you, like, first of all, do you ever find yourself still falling into that competitive frame? And if you do, like, how do you snap yourself out of it and come back to that abundant mentality?
Yeah, I do it all the time. I absolutely do it all the time. And a lot of it just comes back to like, and there's a reason I've read this book so many times. When I find myself off the path, or not connected what I really want to create, or I'm worried like somebody's going to corner the market on, teaching chiropractic adjusting or seeing new patients or something like that. It's like, there's just so many people out there. You have to just come back and realize that it's really unlimited. I mean, potential is unlimited. And that only comes from, I think, sorry, I've got a motorcycle gang out here. It really only comes from constant focusing of the will, which we'll get into in the next couple of chapters. But it's that constant remembering, because if you'll remember when we looked at the stick man last time, there's everything that's outside and then what's inside. So it's very, very easy to start focusing on out here and what you see as reality, and then focusing on that. And so then you hold the mental image of that. And so then you create more of that because you're implanting that in formless substance. So the real key to this, and chapter 9, we'll get into that, but it's the focusing of the will and bringing it back and being focused, obviously, but disciplined in remembering that it's completely abundant. And it's very difficult to do when it seems like the world's not being abundant. And that's where he was talking earlier, that it's not just simple, just sit back and I'll think about $1 million and it shows up in my lap. Thinking a focused, clear, coherent thought with time and repetition and staying on that it's the hardest work that there is, but it's the most effective work that there is. So that comes with time and repetition and practice as you focus the will more and more and more, and really get clear about who you are and what you want.
Right.
So, yeah.
But then the way you said about the time, repetition, consistency, I have the quote here. It's in chapter 8, and this surprised me, and it kind of goes against what I've been doing or what I've been led to believe. It says, it's not necessary to take exercises in concentration, nor to set apart special times for prayer or affirmation, or go into silence, nor do occult stunts of any kind. But what I interpreted from that is, do you think, is that saying that there's no need for meditation or visualization, affirmations, this kind of thing?
No, I think those are all good. But I think his point was, like, you don't have to sit there and pray 1 hour out of the week for what you want. His point was, you want to be ceaseless in getting clear on this image. And I wrote down, because it was right after that, we think in pictures and we need a crystal clear image. It doesn't require effort if you really want it. And so this is what's so important, is to know what your values are, know yourself, and know, is this something that I'm trying to create for me because I really genuinely want this? Or am I trying to create it because I think I should have this, or because the culture at large says this is success? So I think what he's really, really saying is that when you get clarity and you get that coherent, crystal clear image, if you really, really want it, it's not hard. It is hard, but it's not as hard to focus on what you want as trying to focus on something that you don't actually care about. Does that make sense? So you're saying if it's something that's not real for you, it's not a real, genuine desire, then it requires all this external motivation. Whereas if it's something that you really care about and you're inspired from inside, you don't need this external motivation and having to remind yourself, because you're like, I really, really want this.
But then say your goal is you're very focused on, I want to see 100 people a week, and you're building this
Mm-hmm.
practice and you want to see 100 people a week. Wouldn't it help then to repeat that to yourself every day when you wake up? You have an affirmation or you have a reminder somewhere and you say, yes, I am in the process of going to see 100 people a week. But
Well, I
he's saying
think,
you don't have to repeat it. That's what I interpret it as.
well, yeah, but I think what he's getting at here is, rather than an incantation or an affirmation or having it written down in a certain way, I mean, certainly written goals absolutely help. But I think what he's saying is having the clearest vision. Okay. So thinking in a certain way where you're seeing it before it happens in the real world. So like we think in terms of pictures and images. So rather than incantations or affirmations, it's like seeing that so clearly, even from the first perspective, and seeing yourself adjusting those people. And then I would add to that, to just kind of carry on from what we were just talking about. Do you want to see 100 a week? Why do you want to see 100 a week? Who's it for? And what values is it fulfilling? Because if ask anybody who's been in practice for a long time. Aaron is a great one to talk to, but we both, gone for it and built really big practices, because when I get to X, then I'll be successful. And you get to X, and then the goalpost moves. Okay, now when I get to X plus another 100, I'll be successful. And it's a never-ending thing, because you don't have the self-image of being fulfilled. You have the self-image of, I'll be successful when I do this external thing, and then I can feel good enough about myself. Does that make sense? As opposed to like, what's the value? Why would you want to see 100 a week? Because you want X amount of money, or you want these people to look up to you, or you want to be considered by your peers successful, or you get into the mindset of like, you know what? I just know that everybody that gets adjusted they get better. And so I want to adjust a lot of people so they have more life. And like, it's 7:30. It's time for me to go home. 4 people just came in. You know what? Screw it. I want to adjust. So I mean, can you see the difference in the focus there?
Yeah, I'm glad I got your interpretation there, because that's not how I interpreted it. When I read chapter 8, where it's saying that you don't have to do these things, I was like, what? So he's saying you don't have to focus on meditation, this kind of thing. But then in chapter 9, there's a quote. It says, it behoves you. I love that word. We need to bring that word back. It behoves you to guard your thoughts. And I was like, but the way of guarding your thoughts is to, and again, I've been very open and honest in the past on this kind of thing, podcast and that, about my struggle with anxiety during the first couple of years of chiropractic college. And I know you've had a similar thing. And for me, meditation and being very focused on the goal, that was a way to guard the thoughts. So when I read that on my own, I interpreted it as he was kind of contradicting himself, but that's not what you're saying he meant by it.
I mean, it's obviously, it's open for interpretation. I don't see meditation as being contrary to that, because I think it actually helps get you in touch with source. And for me, it's a great way. I always started off with gratitude, because I'm wanting to get to that silent, still place where you're just more in contact with source. And I think what meditation does, if we think about that stick man that I drew last time, it's like taking the faculties of the mind and these external, exteroceptive sensory perception, and you're taking that away so you can make your mental image bigger than what you see out here. So I think it's a very useful exercise, and that may not be what he had in mind, but I think it's a useful exercise in building the willpower, in building imagination, and building connection on the inside rather than what's coming in as programming, if that makes sense.
And as you said, like coming back to source, in other words, with a feeling like anxiety is very much like you're living in the future. You're thinking about all the possible futures. And this is just a way to train yourself to bring your mind back and be more in the present moment, coming back to source, as I think you meant.
Totally, because you've either got anxiety and fear about the future or guilt and shame about the past. But any time that you're not in the present moment, the only time that we can act, the only time that we can create an image, the only time that we can be a thinking center is in the present. Because if we're doing it from the future or the past perspective, then it's just the programming running in there. We're reacting instead of responding. So I don't know. That's funny because like each time you read it, you get new pieces. And I read this like 3 times today, and I just went for a run for an hour, and I listened to the 3 chapters several times, and I didn't even hear that. So that's really interesting. I didn't hear him say about, meditations and affirmations. And I just looked at it like between audio and reading 6 or 7 times.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And I think at different times in your life. So I'm still a student. I'm trying to get through student clinic and get the piece of paper. So where I am compared to you who are in practice and having these seminars, we're in very different places. So when we read it, we're going to interpret it in different ways. That's why I think it's good to get the 2 comparisons.
Yeah. Yeah. And you'll be a different person tomorrow, even. Rochelle and I were talking today after the run, and just about how, it's really easy, especially as a student or as you're going through clinic or you're early on in your career or whatever, and you start to compare yourself against other people and think like, oh, maybe I'm not good enough, or maybe I'm not, I can't adjust this person or whatever. And it's challenging, but you just to stay in the mindset of like, I'm going to do my best, and my best tomorrow will be better than today. And in a week from now, it'll be better. And in a year from now, it'll be better. And the universe is going to perfectly match me up with the people that I can help. And especially if you hold that image, like if they show up in my office, I can help them, because I only ask for people to show up that I can help. And so, trying to stay inside and that image instead of the, oh shit, I didn't get that one to go, or, I'm not good enough. And it's something that happens your entire life in different fields, Yeah. But yeah, it's a good point. We're different people at every day, every year, in every way.
And I went back to what we were talking about in the last chapter 7. It comes back to gratitude. So as long as you're on the way, I'll give an example. I always make sure you'll see this a lot in first years, especially first year, second years, where they'll be at your seminar and they do the adjustment, and then the first thing they do is they because it didn't go right.
Yeah.
And I've tried to train myself. I'm like, some of my adjustments are better than others. You'll never see me go, maybe after I'll reflect on it, but in the moment I'm trying to celebrate the win. So if I did a good side posture, a good anterior thoracic, and then a mediocre cervical, I'm going to celebrate the thoracic and the lumbar first, and then think about what I can do to improve the cervical, to show gratitude to the process.
Yeah, feeling gratitude. And that also brings us right into the next chapter about basically when we hold on to that vision with faith and we move, basically we're causing what we want to be pulled towards us. We're moving towards it. But when we start focusing on doubt and unbelief and uncertainty, then it's actually a vibration that repels what we want away from us. And so and he really talks about, focus on the entity, focus on health rather than disease, wealth, not poverty. And when you focus on your successes, you pull them closer to you. But when you focus on like, shit, that one didn't go, that wasn't good, then you build that in your mind. And you build that, you start forming that mental image and formless stuff, and you start drawing that closer to you. Okay. And there's a big difference between like a pathological self-confidence. I can do anything regardless of, what shows up in the material world, as opposed to, okay, I'm going to focus on what I do well and continue to focus there and continue to strive towards more with an attitude of gratitude and bring that towards you. And it doesn't mean you're going to wake up in the morning as like the best adjuster on the planet, but time and repetition, because it works along the lines of established transmission. An oak tree doesn't become an oak tree from one moment to the next. It's pulled towards you by thought. And so focusing on where we want to move towards will draw that closer to you.
So from an adjustment, from a chiropractic perspective, I think he means like celebrating the small wins as you're on your way to your vision. So I'm not the best adjuster yet, but each time I get incrementally better and better, I'm celebrating it. And then whenever you graduate, let's say you have I think Aaron might have gone through this. You have the goal of seeing 1,000 people a week, but that doesn't mean that when you see 100 people a week that you're just like, keep going to the 1,000. You take time, celebrate. Oh, we saw 100 people this week. Awesome. And then you set the goal like, oh, but you need to let that land almost and be grateful for it, because it's a step on the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think DeMartini, he had the best explanation I'd ever heard of. And he said something to the effect of, if I come and give you a gift and you don't say thank you for it, and I keep giving you gifts and you never say thank you, and you're not even appreciative of what I give you, am I inclined to give you more? The universe works the same way. So
makes sense.
When we are thankful about, what is the phrase? When we're thankful about what we have, we get more to be thankful about.
Attitude of gratitude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I fundamentally believe that in it. DeMartini as well, he talks about this, that gratitude, when you get fully dropped into gratitude, that's what opens the heart to unconditional love. And love is the strongest field in the world. And I mean, if you know anything about heart-brain coherence, the heart is a bigger electromagnetic generator. And when we get connected to love, well, that brings presence and certainty to the mind. It inspires and enthuses the body. Entheos is God in the body. And it's basically, it raises the vibration. So gratitude is like the easiest way to cut off that stinking thinking, like focusing on the shit you don't want. Okay, all right. It's not where I wanted to be right now, but what can I be grateful about right now, right in this second? And if you focus on it enough to actually bring the feeling, then it will change the mindset and it will change your thoughts. And that's the work.
Okay. So really so chapter 7 is about gratitude, and then chapter 8 is about holding the vision very, very steadily in your mind and not ceasing from that, which doesn't necessarily mean repetition and reading affirmations over and over again. It just means you're holding the image. Image is the key word, I guess, from your interpretation. Yes. Holding that in your mind. That makes more sense to me anyway.
And then chapter 9, how to use the will, which is basically thinking in a certain way, is chapter 8. But it's being careful. It's guarding the seeds you allow to be planted in the garden of your mind. So when you start to hold a thought that is contrary to what your image is, then you have to be conscientious to get back into gratitude. Think about, what is it that I want? How am I certain about it? What's that clarity? Where's that image? And then guarding, letting other things come in, the doubt and uncertainty and unbelief, disbelief.
A really key one that I got from chapter 9, and I'm really excited to hear your interpretation of it and how you're viewing it. The quote right at the start, and it says, you need not apply your willpower to anything outside of yourself. And then it says, it is wrong to apply your will to other men and women in order to get them to do what you wish done. Now, there's two ways I interpret that. So the first thought that came to my head is high pressure sales tactics. I hate the concept of high pressure sales tactics when it comes to a patient, because to me, this stuff, when you're doing it well and you're communicating it authentically, it just sells itself. Like I don't need to be putting pressure on patients. I mean, I'm not in practice, but my sales style when I'm getting people to sign up for student clinic is I'm very like, okay, here's what I do. Here's what I don't do. Are you in or are you out? If you're in, let's get on board, because it sells itself. But then when I'm not talking about my relationship with the patient, when I'm talking about my relationship with my peers, when I'm talking about other chiropractors, I do tend to impose my will on them a bit, and I will put pressure on people, which is going against what the book says. But the way I'm doing it in my mind is I'm putting pressure on them because I want them to be better, and that's why I'll use harsh words, and I will push people's buttons a little bit, because I'm trying to get them to be better. How do you interpret that?
Yeah, I interpret it the same way. That when our own values are challenged is when we tend to get shitty, and like kind of not as loving, not as open, not as agreeable, because it's so dear to us that you almost see it as an affront, you know, and like that's probably one of the main places I get challenged when I chiropractic doesn't belong to me, but I love it so much. Is I don't have children, but it's like as if it were my child, and if someone were, you know, picking on my child or abusing my child or treating it poorly, I get that same sense of I get wound up and I get in my reactive state instead of responding, and you know, I become more animalistic, more protective of it. So I fully understand that, and it's a challenge to allow people to want what they want, you know, especially when it's like, I don't want to see you dilute what I care about so much. But I think what he really does a good job of here is saying that medicine as a study of disease has brought more disease, you know. Abundance as a study of poverty brings more poverty. Religion as a study of sin brings more wretchedness. And so as hard as it may be, rather than focusing on the people that may not be doing it the way that we perceive to be a better way, it's focusing on, okay, that adjustment was okay, but it was good, and here's what I can be grateful for. This person is doing this. I can be grateful that they're wanting to, and you can just make the most of yourself. And he talks a lot about how it's not our job to get poverty. How did he write this? It was really good. What tends to do away with poverty is not getting the pictures of poverty in your mind, but getting pictures of wealth, abundance, and possibility into the minds of the poor. So basically keeping your mindset on what it is and being steps above them, so it's attractive and they come towards it. Does that make sense?
What you're saying makes sense, but again, to be devil's advocate, there's a documentary on now about Michael Jordan on Netflix, yeah. And Michael Jordan, he was harsh to his teammates. The people, they were getting put under more pressure in practice, and they were being berated by Michael Jordan, which is going against what would be said in this book. But he's doing it because he wants the team to be better. And I don't care about your short-term feelings and emotions as long as we're getting towards, I want what's best for you. And maybe I have to hurt your feelings to get you to take the action that's going to get us to where we need to go. That's the way I interpret it. Possibly.
Or he was more certain than anyone else. He had a clearer mental image than anyone else. It was more important to him than anyone else. And listen, you're going to get judged from the outside, because some people are going to think that what you want or what you're certain about is bullshit. There's plenty of people who think chiropractic is just complete quackery. But is that going to change? Like, it doesn't change what I know to be real inside. And I don't know if I'm making any sense. Your certainty's got to be greater than their doubt. And I think Michael Jordan, although, I mean, obviously that has some collateral damage there, but his certainty was so great that it did bring a lot of people along with him. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I'm waiting to see the next episode on Monday and see where it goes from there. But
oh, you're watching it too. Good stuff.
Yeah.
We'll do some podcasts about every episode of that.
Yeah.
Like
but I mean, you got to admit, like, I mean, from the few episodes that we've seen so far, or I imagine you're caught up, it's basically he thought and acted in a certain way, like no one else. He was more certain than anybody else. Yeah. And he really did affect his outcome. I mean, I even wonder to the effect, like, you know, I'm from North Carolina and I know his background, and like I'm not sure he didn't make himself grow. His parents are shorter, and, you know, he was in junior high and he was like 5'9", and his junior year, he shot up to 6'3" and then 6'6". I'm not sure that he wasn't so certain and so focused on this that he didn't affect growth. There's an idea of like Darwinian evolution, which is survival of the fittest. This one's stronger, so it lives longer than this one. But his contemporary was Lamarck, and Lamarck had this idea of teleology, which is the intention, the telos, the end in mind. And so giraffes had long necks, not because one had this spontaneous long neck, and it found another one on the other side of the savannah that had a long neck, and they bred and created more genes like that. But the actual intention of wanting to eat the leaves up high, the intention created the physical outcome. And it really lends to Lamarckian evolution is more along the lines of there's a thinking stuff. And when we imprint our mind on, or when we are thinkers in that field, and when we think thoughts, then we can affect the outcome. So anyway, what was the point of that? Michael Jordan, he was so certain, and he wanted to win, and he wanted to be the best. And he wasn't even great as a kid. He wasn't even really good. He didn't even make his team in his sophomore year. And they said he wasn't really that great right when he left Carolina and was going to the Bulls, and then he became great. So,
but you're talking about him becoming great. So that's him. So I know in my own certainty that, yes, I'm going to be a great chiropractor. But if I've got people around me that I know could be great chiropractors, and I'm trying to bring them with me,
mm-hmm.
and maybe in order to do that, sometimes I'll, like, you've never really seen me being harsh because we're not in the same social circles. But when I'm with my peers, I'm brutal to them. I'll call people losers. I'll say, you're not doing this. Like, it's okay. The competition doesn't mind that you won't leave your comfort zone. Like, the osteopathy profession, the medical profession, they don't mind that you're not gonna push yourself. And like, I'll be harsh. And some people, when you speak to them that way, they get riled up, and they're like, okay, fuck it, right, I'll do it. And then you kind of, but other people, when you talk to them that way, they retract. But it's not because I'm trying to be a mean person, maybe a little bit, but it's because I care for them, and I want the best for them, and I want the best for chiropractic. So I'm trying to push them along because they're my teammates, right? So that's why I found conflicting thoughts in this chapter.
Yeah, I mean, it's challenging because it will attract certain people and it will repel other people. But I think the point is to live by example, and just be the best that you can be, to the point where people want to follow that. You know, I don't know. We could go really deep on that one, but
yeah, that's a whole episode on its own. To come back to the what we were talking about with the communication with the patient, so high pressure sales tactics, this kind of thing, which it turns me, because I'm like, we don't need to be doing it. And I love the quote in there. It said, to get rich, you need only use willpower upon yourself. And it made me think, you could work really hard to become a great chiropractor, or you could work really hard for years to become a great manipulator. And it would probably take you the same amount of time and effort to do both.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And, I think the best use of that, even as a student, would be just to put so much effort into doing well at it that it inspires other people. And I know for me, nobody could have talked me into being great at chiropractic. It was seeing somebody, like I remember Arno adjusting me, and it was having the experience of like, holy shit, that was different than everything I've received. And I don't have that. I want that. And I don't know. I mean, it could have been talked about or whatever, but it was just the experience. So building yourself to the level of where you can provide that undeniable experience, and I think it will pull more people along than the carrot or the stick. You know what I mean?
Yeah, as in the carrot or the stick would be like imposing your will on a patient because you want to make this amount of money. Like, in order to make money, I'd rather set up a system where they're very happy and willing to come and pay me for my service. I don't need to use psychological tricks and manipulation tactics and then go to some seminar and shout about how much money I made and jump up and down clapping like a seal. That's not my idea of success. Right. But it doesn't mean that if I just communicate chiropractic to the people and adjust from that space where I'm trying to serve them, of course you're going to make a lot of money doing that. So I just see it, we could bypass all those high pressure sales tactics. We don't need it.
Totally. Absolutely. 100%. But it comes from, And it comes from a lot of things. It comes from your belief in yourself, in your communication, in your ability to adjust. And I mean, I think Mark Hudson's his Hudson's hierarchy. I think it's brilliant. It's great. It's like belief in self, belief in tick, and then the other three are tied. It's like your
Communication,
technique and your
business.
business and communication, right? Yeah. So those are the external factors, but it's really like can't put a tuxedo on a turd, man. If people don't believe that they're worth something, if that belief in self and they don't believe in chiropractic, and it sounds weird because it does require belief, you know, but without that, it doesn't matter. There's no level. You're going to need external tactics. There's inner game and outer game. If you don't have some level of certainty, first of all, worth, like that you're worth it, and then certainty that it's going to come towards you, then all the external stuff is just fluff. It doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter if you're a good adjuster. If you don't have a self-worth that you deserve, like that, for me, I became a really good adjuster way before I had self-worth. And I could really, really adjust well, but I didn't have success in practice. Whereas later,
What changed?
A lot of stuff, a lot of self-worth, self-growth, self-work, but a couple of different experiences, different programs that I went through. Highly recommend DeMartini Breakthrough. I went to this program called AMP, and that was probably the biggest for me. But it was just dealing with your baggage, dealing with your shit that keeps you thinking like, oh, no matter, like, that's the point of working towards getting 100 a day for the numbers or to feel a certain way, as opposed to like, no, I'm just worthy just because I'm alive, because the universe doesn't make purposeless things, but you get that mother, father, teacher, preacher culture, subconscious stuff in there that you can talk all the shit you want and practice all the external stuff. But if you don't get that out of the way, then it's that subconscious, that feeling that we're tapping into that's creating our reality. And so I would work my ass off and become a great adjuster. But if I didn't think that I was worth it, then I wouldn't have the monetary success with it. So, yeah.
You mentioned there the inner world and the outer world, and it reminded me of a thing I watched. That was Tony Robbins, and he's coaching this guy, and he's like, you have to master both. He's like, what happens when you don't master both? Well, look at Robin Williams. Had all the riches and all the fame in the world. The outer world stuff, he was very successful on paper.
Yeah.
But in here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so true. I mean, there's so many people just, it's fundamental, just becoming clear that it's really your deserve of on a lot of things. This is like, here's the science of getting rich in a nutshell. Okay. You don't get what you want. You get what you think you deserve. You get what you expect. Okay. And when you can hold the image of something and you're grateful that it's coming towards you and you expect that it's going to happen, then it will. But if you got all the subconscious programs in there that are telling you all the reasons why you shouldn't, why it's wrong, because it's this, that, the other thing, you're creating that too, just unconsciously.
And everything else on top of that's just going to be a mask.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is off the science of getting rich, but it's really, DeMartini talks about it's an intelligent universe that's bringing you this shit to help wake you up to the true realization that it's all love. And when those things in your life that you think have crippled you or done this, that, the other thing, you start to realize like, oh my God, that was a beautiful experience. It gave me, I'm grateful for it. That's how I got the gifts that I have.
Yeah.
It's, I don't know where that is and how to use the will, but it's super, super important because it's creating the thoughts and the feelings that are vibrating in a certain way that causes us to act in a certain way that attracts our life to us.
I'll wrap up with this. I loved this quote because to me, this is pure chiropractic. Things are not brought into being by thinking about their opposites. Health is never to be attained by studying disease and thinking about disease. Righteousness is not to be promoted by studying sin and thinking about sin. And nobody ever got rich by studying poverty and thinking about poverty. I love that.
Yeah, it's great. And the one right after that was probably my favorite one in the whole thing. I don't have it with me, but I think that medicine as a study of disease has brought about more disease. Religion as a study of sin has brought about more wretchedness. And, you know, wealth as a study of poverty just brings about more poverty.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Again, it's funny how we both read the same thing, but from one passage to the next is what we took out of it. Because I remember reading what you just said, but it didn't land, whereas the one above landed.
Yeah. Good stuff, man.
I really love going through this with you and getting some good insights. So thank you once again.
It's great. I don't know how many people are participating in the group. I hope they are. I'd love to have, you know, just some feedback. If people could drop some comments and, you know, if this is good for them. I thought at one point I was like, you know what, maybe if people aren't interested, maybe we shouldn't carry on. But you know what, if it's just you and I'm getting a ton out of this going back and studying it. So I'm not doing it to get anything from anybody, but doing it because it's creative for me and it's helping me. So it would be wonderful to know if it's helpful for other people though as well.
Yeah. Sometimes I think with these things that take a bit of work, like people like the idea of doing it. And because of this whole Corona shenanigan, there's so much content. There's webinars on every day.
I know.
And you can listen to it while you're cleaning the house. But this requires dedicated study and engagement in order to get the most out of it. And you know, some people they're not ready for that. They'd rather have, you know, if I have kale juice in one hand and this is literally going to add years to your life, it's going to make you healthier, and I have Coca-Cola in the other hand, which literally will kill you, and there's nothing in there that's good for you, but it tastes good and it feels nice at the time. Most people are going to take the Coca-Cola. I think there's a lot of Coca-Cola going around at the minute, and that's great. I'm trying to focus on the kale juice. It's going to take a bit of work. You're going to have to put some dedicated time into it, but it's going to be much better for you.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a great perspective. Awesome. So next time we do 10, 11, 13.
Sounds like a plan.
Cool. So what I'm going to do when this drops, I'm going to post as well a video with John DeMartini, and he talks about values. And I'm also going to put the DeMartini values evaluation process, because I really do think that's a big part of it. You're talking about like thinking in a certain way, and he's saying that it doesn't require effort if you really want it. So you really need to know, like, what do you care about? And so many times we've got other people's values wondering, like, and we take them on board and we think we want this thing, but it's not even who you are. So I'm going to post that. People that want to watch it and do it, it's one of the most powerful exercises you can do. So
awesome.
Cool.
Speak to you soon, Patrick. Bye.
All right. Sounds good, buddy.